Hey, how you doing, huh? VC coming at you from the office studio. It's been a minute since we've been able to cut a vid from this location. VC's been out in the world smashing them coffees and whooping that ass. I forgot how it feels like to smash one of these pre-packaged bad boys with my amp unit and shoot that shit about pro wrestling. So let's do that, man. A few stories that BC wants to go over. Limited time, about a half an hour roughly, give or take a minute or two. I want to talk about Triple H from the jump. This dude, Mr. Way with words, he can speak for 25 minutes, 10 pages of notes, and you'll get nothing out of it. This dude speaks in circles. He recently talked about the releases and why they were done. And then he spoke about Samoa Joe and spoke some more nonsense. So we're going to talk about it. Also, we've known for the longest time that McMahon and McMahon alone is making Monday Night Raw treacherous, right? It's nobody else. You can blame Kevin Dunn, you can blame Bruce Pritchard, you can blame the 617 writers. Vince McMahon makes all of the decisions. He is ripping up every script that is given to him minutes before the show, and now Lana, of all people, is spilling the beans on even more stories of Vince McMahon and just how cringeworthy and awkward this dude was behind the scenes. We're going to talk about too, man. That as well from Lana. And also, we're going to talk more of the JR fallout. Of course, JR calling AEW Dynamite, WWE Dynamite at the end of Dynamite show this past week. And it's been the polarizing topic coming off of AEW, which is sad because they actually had a decent show with a pretty good main event. But for the second show in a row, it's not the wrestling we're talking about. It's WWE, right? Eddie Kingston taking away from the main event on last Saturday, which was a really good main event, Omega and Jungle Boy. But it's Kingston's comments after the show was already off the air that actually captivated the wrestling world. So was that the time for Kingston to say those words after Jungle Boy and Omega just did what they did? Nothing exceptional, but it was a good match. And then this past Wednesday, another decent main event on a decent show, and everybody's talking about WWE coming out of the mouths of AEW. We're going to talk about it, man. Is this a problem, or is this just another mistake? We're going to talk about it in the most logical, most common-sensed way possible, man. Sometimes you just got to break it down, stop overthinking it. Let's use some logic and common sense. That's what we're going to try to do in this short, impromptu bonus vid ahead of SmackDown tonight. But I do want to start with Triple H, and I do want to start with his words, very brief words. I'm going to show you guys, actually, the paragraph about the releases, and Triple H asked about them, and in his response, while it is the most it's the most politically correct PG type of corporate statement you're gonna get, there's also just this hint of just lack of sincerity, lack of any compassion, and lack of any acknowledgement that they had anything to do with these releases. Like, maybe if they didn't cause the problems, the ripple effect would not have led to the releases. It's a lack of responsibility. I'll show you guys the paragraph and I'll break it down to exactly what I'm talking about. H says, coming out of the and pandem and everything else, all companies are having to make difficult decisions, and we were no different. It's a part of what we do when it happens on a regular basis. All companies have to do it. It's not the most pleasant part of what you do, but it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, so where do we begin? First of all, let's begin with a salute to my amp unit. Let's actually crack this son bitch. This is number 3 in the morning already. First and foremost, before we even get to the "it is what it is" statement, can we just talk about him always comparing WWE to other entities, other companies, other sports. How about you stop doing that, and how about you start being the very best of what you can be? Be the very first WWE, not the next NFL, NBA, or MLB. And by the way, these mass cuts on talent do not happen in any of those sports. They do not happen with the Yankees, or my Knicks, or my Packers. And in other companies, they don't hoard talented motherfuckers, sit them at home, and then fire them. Because that's the MO of this company, Triple H. So you can compare all you want, you're actually giving out falsities. False informations, straight lies. Number 2, let me salute my unit first. Salute to all my amp unit, man. Rocking out another month of content the only way we know how. Amplify, baby! Like a fine wine, these things age, man. I've had this bad boy locked away for a few weeks now. I think everything kind of settled in. Oh, it's so good. Now he says it is what it is, right? All these releases, it's business. It is what it is. Tell that to the people losing their jobs. Tell that to the people that were caught off guard. Tell that with those that were told to sit home, and when we have something for you, we're going to call you in, or we're going to give you this gimmick now. I know it might not be what you want, but play it out, do the best you can, and we assure you, we're going to have something better for you down the line. And then they get those walking papers. It is what it is the best you got, Triple H. I tell you, man, this is a lack of responsibility. It is what it is. What if you made it not that? Oh, gotcha there. Think about that, Triple H. What if you created a company, right? A dynamic, a system in place where you didn't hoard all of this talent, which you never had a plan for, and those that are used are horribly misused. Instead of doing that, what if you created a dynamic in a system where you brought in people that were actually going to benefit, and you were going to benefit from everybody's work? Instead of hoarding, saving them for a rainy day, and then changing your mind and saying you're fired, what if you brought people in to actually do a job that is needed? For instance, Mark Calaway, The Undertaker, right? Vince really wanted The Undertaker character. Mark Calaway comes a-knocking. Vince says, go home, I'm going to do some thinking. Calls up Mark and says, is this The Undertaker? And Mark Calaway's like, yes, this is The Undertaker. That's a true story. That's how it all happened. But back in the day, Vince was doing business much better. Vince needed to fill a character. He had the perfect person to do it, or so he thought, and he was right. Now what happens is you have companies popping up like AEW. Vince gets a little bit on edge, and he says, let's get all this talent so nobody else can grab them. And when AEW started to form, you started to see WWE locking in contracts and hiring people to all this money and all these years. But you knew this is bad business. You knew they couldn't withstand that. If something happens company-wise, they're not going to be able to withhold all of those contracts. Well, something happened. It was the pandemic. And now it is what it is. But it didn't have to be. You claim that all companies go through this, but if you look at the reasons that those companies are going through it, none of them made the asinine decision to just hoard people so nobody else can get them, to bring in positions that they didn't actually have positions for. That's just ass backwards business. You filled up your WWE bubble to the point where it was going to pop. Why bring in everybody? Why fill up that bubble to the max when it didn't need to be? You were playing with careers, playing with people's livelihoods. And when it no longer suited you, you gave people their walking papers. A mass exodus, several Black Wednesdays where everybody's getting fired, released. Not even just names that you would think Vince McMahon or you knew from the jump he had nothing for, so it shouldn't shock us that much, but it was names that actually did shock us, like the Samoa Joes, like the Mickey Jameses, like the Aleister Blacks, and so many others. Speaking of Samoa Joe, Triple H went on to talk about Joe and how does he get fired and then he comes back. I mean, isn't anybody talking to one another in that company? Listen to what Triple H has to say about Samoa Joe coming back. And you tell me this is not ass backwards business. H says, it wasn't like he got let go from one part of the company and the other part of the company hired him. It's all one big company. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. There was an opportunity for him to transition, no different than you would say, well, he was released from this pitching contract and started managing the team and became a coach. It's a similar situation. Does this dude honestly believe his own words? Unreal. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. Where do we begin? So he says it's not like Samoa Joe just was fired from one part of the company and then hired by another part. Well, that's exactly what happened, though, Triple H. He's like, it's all one big company. It's not like that. Well, we know it's one big company, but that's exactly what happened. One part of your company fired him. The other branch of the company hired him. And then he goes on to say, we all know what we are doing. So we all know what one another is doing, he says. So unable to save face, he tries to say, no, we all were on the same page. Wait, so you fired Samoa Joe just to hire him back and everybody knew that was going to happen? Why would you go public with a firing? He goes on to say it is no different than a pitcher transitioning into a manager or going to play catcher or whatever he says. Triple H, bro, work with me. Again, logic and common sense is the theme of this vid. Work with me. That is not what happens if you are a pitcher and you are going to become a catcher or you're going to be the next manager. You're not being fired from the organization publicly and then weeks or months later coming back in a new role with a different branch. That's not what happens. Your legal teams would come in, the player's legal team with the organization's legal team, and you just refine the paperwork. You refigure the paperwork, reconstruct that son of a bitch. It's not a release firing. They went public with Samoa Joe's release. Samoa Joe has been released from WWE, and then months later he comes back in this role. That's not what happens if the Yankees want to cut Joe Girardi from catcher within the same season, make him a manager. You wouldn't just go public on a firing or a release and then a month later announce Joe Girardi. You just would not do that. So I don't know what sports you are watching, Triple H, but it is not professional sports like baseball and football, basketball. That's not how it works. Your teams come together and you refine the paperwork. You don't get publicly fired if you're going to transition. It's in a company. You could work in the fucking supermarket starting out as a bagger. And what happens if you become the overnight shift manager? They wouldn't fire you and bring you back 2 months later to become the overnight shift manager or supervisor. They would wait till the position becomes available. Then you get to transfer into that position. You don't have to lose your job. What is this guy talking about? We're all on the same page. We all know what we're doing when one another makes a move. So Triple H is telling us the plan all along was to release this guy, publicly release him, and then months later bring him back in this role. That was if it's a money issue, anything that you need to reconstructure that contract, right? Bring Samoa Joe back, but for less money. You do that with your teams, man. You don't just publicly release a son of a bitch. You have a plan in motion. You're talking with Joe the entire time, and his team is talking with your team. it's just false and it's a lie. It's just a fucking straight out lie, dude. You released the son of a bitch because you were trying to reconfigure your broadcast team. You're bringing in Adnan Virk at the time, and you're going to have a new look to the team. And Joe was not worth anything to you because you would not clear him to compete. You released the guy. You saw the outrage on social media. Everyone was befuddled. We knew he was going to be something big, man. If AEW wants to grab him as just a dude backstage that is helping out talent, he was going to be a big find for AEW. A big grab. And Triple H knew that, man. And Triple H's ego is massive, just like McMahon's. You think he likes getting his ass whooped every week by AEW just because they're not on the same night doesn't mean he doesn't like to look at this week's headlines and he sees that NXT draws a record low, and then he sees AEW on their first night back in their time slot, almost at 900,000 viewers. H doesn't like that shit, man. So he grabbed Joe before they could. They're not on the same page. McMahon is erratic. And Triple H is trying to play cleanup. But you'll never fully clean it up. Any situation will never be fully cleaned up if you're helping to dirty it. If you're helping to muddy those waters will never become clear. Triple H is better than Vince McMahon, thankfully. But don't be so sure that he's not cut from the same damn cloth. Anyway, it is what it is about the releases. And Samoa Joe, it's not like he just went out of one part of the company and came back another. Although that's exactly what happened. It's not like we're not all on the same page. But you weren't. And it's not any different than any other sport where somebody's going to transfer to another position. It's exactly the opposite, Triple H. Everything you said in just 2 paragraphs was absolute ass backwards or just a bold-faced lie. But what am I going to say, right? I'm just a YouTuber. He's just a podcaster. So I'll take my logic and common sense and move on, as we all will, to Lana real quick. Lana gives more insight on just how ass backwards Vince McMahon is. Lana talks about the debut of Chelsea Green, or what was supposed to be all of this filming that was done, all of this planning going into it by the creative team, and of course Vince McMahon says, "No, I don't like it." Listen to what Lana said, or at least see the words. BC will recite these words to you. And this is exactly what Lana said. I believe this was on Jericho's podcast recently. But check it out. Lana says, "One time I was there for 19 hours to do a 60-second backstage. I'm not even kidding. It was insane. One time, Natty and we did this whole segment with Mickie James, and they debuted Chelsea Green. This was at the Performance Center. I was managing Natty. It was the first time I was managing her, and Chelsea was supposed to debut with Mickie. We did it all. We went home, I'm in bed, and we get a call from one of the writers." Oh boy. She goes on to say, "Vince looked at it and said, 'No, cut the whole thing.' And we had to go back to film another backstage, all of it. Chelsea didn't even debut. We had the match. It was just constantly weird stuff like that. Once we went to live television, I was so excited. I was like, yay, we can't rethink it. It's out there. Oh well, for better or worse." All right, so you heard Lana straight out, man. Or at least you saw those words, man. Lana is talking about Chelsea coming in and debuting, and the whole thing got scrapped after it was filmed. Now, we know about the ripping up of scripts, but we're starting to hear more stories about things actually being filmed during this whole taping of the Thunderdome series. That's what I called this last year. The fucking tragic Thunderdome series. Something we'll never want to go back and watch. Any of it. And now we're starting to hear more stories of things being filmed, and Vince was just like, no. Shayna Baszler talks about how she went to do a match. I believe it was with Natty. They come back. They thought they hit a home run. Vince is like, no, don't like it. Redo it and try this, that, and the other thing. And they do it. They come back. And Vince is like, I hated it. So Shayna's now confused. So then they have another match a week or two later, and Shayna just does what she did the first time because fuck it. If he doesn't like anything I'm doing, I'm just going to be me. So she comes back through the curtain and Vince is like, loved it. And Shayna's like, well, that was what I did Vince just confuses the fuck out of motherfucker. It's almost like he just wants to fucking sabotage his own company just to feel like he's doing something. He already brought it to the promised land. Only one thing left to do. Let's ruin the son of a bitch before my doofus son-in-law can get it. So Lana's talking about this craziness where they all filmed something. They thought it was good. They go to bed. They wake up the next morning. They get a fucking phone call. By the way, we need you to come in and film something totally different. Chelsea never even debuts at that point. And what we ended up getting, if you guys remember around that time frame, was absolutely fucking shit. So it makes you think, could have what they have planned been at least better than what we got? You gotta believe so. And that's why I always say you can blame Bruce and Kevin and 617 writers. Bro, there's one person to blame here, and that is Vincent Kennedy McMahon. When something has been so bad for so long, you have to blame the captain of the ship, the pilot of the plane, the head honcho, the owner. No longer are you going to blame the waiter or the manager, the night shift supervisor. You gotta blame the owner, man. Because this is the dude that's making these erratic decisions. This is the guy who, even when Bruce Pritchard was not there, this company was still complete shit. When Paul Heyman, who was our best fucking bet at the time, just a couple years ago, when Paul Heyman was at the helm of Raw, you saw slight pushes for those that we were hoping for, but just slight. The product was still absolute garbage. It was because Vince was roadblocking Paul Heyman at every avenue, every boulevard, every fucking street in Cul-de-sac. You know I'm right. Bruce Pritchard, you just talked about Aleister Black, just did his fucking shoot interview a few weeks ago when he said, I know, he doesn't know I know this, but I know that Bruce Pritchard had my back. Many people told me Bruce is fighting for you, and look what happened to Aleister. Vince's decision. You don't think Pritchard wants to push somebody like Black? Think again, man. Black is telling you differently. Makes you wonder about Keith Lee and all of them. So we like to blame everybody else because as a smart fan now, right? We're all smarks all of a sudden. Smart marks. We all know the behind the scenes and we know the titles of everybody and we like to act like we know what's actually happening. It's not the case. So what BC likes to do is listen to the actual talent, and that's how I form my own facts. I don't like opinions. They're like assholes. Everybody's got them, and they're usually full of shit. I like facts on this channel, and I get those facts from the actual talent. And now here's Lana. I know she has a lot to talk about. She's got some gripes with the organization, but she's got no reason to lie about this, and this confirms what Chelsea Green alluded to so many times. Chelsea Green came out and said I was supposed to debut X, Y, and Z. This is just a little bit more detail into that. Mind-boggling. Just when you think Vince McMahon is so damn erratic, so far off the track, more stories come out about how just bad this dude is conducting business. But at the end of the day, he's resting on those laurels and everything. The empire that he built for decades, he's cashing in right now. He's selling that stock. He's selling the billion-dollar deal of what SmackDown is to Fox. He made the other billion-dollar deal to Peacock for his network. So everything he created, he's selling that now, but he'll never get those type of deals going forward because now the company, it's in a shithole. Audiences are running away in droves, man. Raw just scored another record low this week. For a non-holiday Raw, by the way. So if there's no audience there, Fox is not going to give you that $1 billion. A company like Comcast, Peacock, Universal is not going to give you $1 billion. So he's cashing in now, man. He's saying, fuck it. I refuse to listen to the fans. I will remain stubborn and I'll be that fucking billionaire asshole that you all think I am anyway. It's the truth, man. Trust me. I've been fucking dissecting Vince McMahon for fucking decades, man. A one-time genius, believe it or not. Not so much anymore. I want to close out with Jim Ross. We already know the gaffe, the mistake, the blunder. And there's a lot of fans because we love JR. I mean, I know most of us do. I know I fucking do. He's the soundtrack to a lot of our childhoods. And he's just a damn legend, man. But, and because of that, a lot of people are just swiping these mistakes under the rug. right? Oh, it's just a mistake, relax. But the problem is, if you keep making the same mistake, it's no longer a mistake, it's a pattern, right? That's a pattern. And when you see a pattern, that could become a problem. I always get a kick out of those people that have no regrets tattooed on them, right? I'll be in Starbucks and in front of me, the person on the back of their neck will have a no regrets tattoo or a t-shirt or a meme that says no regrets. And I always think, man, it must be nice to live a life of perfection, because BC's the opposite. I have a million regrets. I've made a million mistakes and bad choices growing up, from the projects to making bad choices, going into the big house and owning up to my shit and paying the price. And here I am today, many moons later, and man, I would like a million do-overs. But to see people say no regrets, I mean, that must be great for them, because I'll never know that feeling. I have many. So I have no problem with mistakes. Again, Dean Malenko was the man of a fucking million holds or whatever the fuck. Well, BC's the man of a million mistakes. I have no problem with mistakes, botches, blunders. The problem is when you see mistake after mistake and it's the same one, it's not just a mistake, it's a pattern. Nia Jax, perfect example, right? I have no problem with a botch. It's going to happen in pro wrestling, especially if you're going full throttle. You have the utmost confidence. You're really feeling yourself. There might be a botch or two in the match. But Nia Jax, for instance, injuring more than 10 females, a couple of them multiple times. Well, that's a pattern. That's a problem. That's not just a botch, right? And to this day, whenever she injures somebody, people go, "Mom, it's pro wrestling. It's going to happen. You guys are so mean." No, we're not mean. We're saying maybe go back and get retrained because you're injuring too many people. That's all we're saying. We're not saying lose your job. There's a pattern going on. It's a problem. Back to Jim Ross, man. With Jim Ross, this is a pattern now. He literally ended Dynamite this past Wednesday night. He ended the show, not just the middle of the show, where you can maybe save yourself. This was at the end where he said, and I quote, "There is nothing like seeing a live WWE Dynamite." Good night, folks. That's how he ended the show, telling everyone that there's nothing like seeing a live WWE show. That's not just a mistake. That is a fireable offense to most organizations. I'm telling you right now, if you were to show up to a big Gatorade outing, right? Gatorade is holding this huge event about new products coming. In one of the voices for Gatorade, their lead marketing rep ends the whole outing with, "Thank you, all of you, for making Powerade the #1 energy drink." Or electrolyte drink, power drink on the planet. "Thank you for making Powerade #1. And he ends the event and some streamers go off, some confetti, and everyone's like, "Powerade? Powerade?" Could you fucking imagine if fucking the Lexus car company holds this big event and at the very end their lead representative says, "Thank you for making Audi. There is nothing like driving an Audi. You will never go to another car once you drive an Audi." And all of a sudden the confetti drops and everyone's like, "Wait, this is a Lexus event. You're fired." There's no coming back from that. That is a PR botch that is going to live on in infamy, right? In pro wrestling, because Jim Ross is a legend, because we love Jim Ross, man, we're not calling for his job at all. Nobody's doing that, actually. We know there's many roles for Jim Ross in AEW. He gets to keep that money coming in, and he gets to help out all the younger dudes and gals. No question. Nobody's calling for Jim Ross's job. Should he be behind that headset? That is the question now. After these latest events, because this isn't just one mistake. He literally called the champion of AEW just a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, whatever it was, Omega. He called him the WWE champion. He is constantly talking WWE and only WWE on his podcast and in interviews. And you say, right, we chalk it up to, well, he spent decades in WWE. What do you expect him to talk about? You have to know that you are now the voice of this company. And you have to know how to totally 180, 360 some bitches around and around, back to another 180, 240, and then back to a 120. You got to switch up those questions left and right to where you boggle everybody back to AEW. You have to know how to promote your company. You have to know how to wave your flag. There comes a time, we let this dude do this for over a year, man. Talk mostly about WWE. Even shitting on AEW a lot of the times. Even just recently saying the best wrestler, that's Randy Orton. Not the guy with a bunch of titles on my company. Hey, we like honesty, right? So we're always throwing these mulligans, but have we not reached a time now where this dude is going to eventually have to start waving his flag? I mean, you could sit there at commentary behind that WWE Hall of Fame ring all the time and make these botches and know that everybody is going to come to your defense. Or you can man up and accept the fact that it's time for another position. And maybe somebody who can actually pump and promote AEW up a little bit, just a little bit better. Maybe it's time to give them a chance. Jim Ross, it's not just these mistakes, guys. These mistakes. Jim Ross is a guy who, ever since he was doing play-by-play or commentary for New Japan, this is a dude who just seems like he's not interested in the product. It seems like he doesn't care. When he makes a mistake and Excalibur or somebody tries to correct him, he passes it off, almost downplaying it to the point of degrading Excalibur for even mentioning it. Yeah, whatever. It seems like a guy who he honestly believes WWE was the best he's ever going to achieve. And now he's playing around with the little leagues. That's how it comes across. It seems like a guy who has lost that passion. And everybody wants to just say, well, he's older, let it be. He's a legend, let it be. Mistakes happen, let it be. This is a pattern. You are the voice of AEW, and you're just no longer good at the job. That may seem harsh, but how can you honestly call yourself a pro wrestling fan and not call it down the middle a factual statement? JR is just no longer good as the lead guy of a top pro wrestling company. It pains me to say because we love the dude. Nobody is calling for his job to be gone. But he has to now step into a behind-the-scenes role, a backstage role. I love listening to Ross, especially with him and Tony Schiavone. Or at least at one point I did. Now it's cringeworthy because now we need that passion and that amplification. We need energy. And Jim Ross no longer delivers it. He seems like he's disinterested in the product. Seems like he doesn't even follow the product. And now the mistakes that everybody says relax, they're just mistakes. They're happening far too often. And they're not just minor, they're mega. WWE champion Kenny Omega. WWE Dynamite. There's nothing like seeing a live WWE show. This will get you fired in any other company. But pro wrestling fans want to be righteous to the point where they don't even care about being right. Think about that statement. Look what Chris Jericho, man. Chris Jericho's trying to defend Jim Ross. He's being a good company guy. Look what Chris Jericho says. Jericho says, pointing out that small mistakes or no small mistakes, JR is the greatest wrestling commentator of all time. Okay, not many people arguing that, Chris. That's not the point. Also, Damien Sandow, I just want to do a 2-for-1 here. Damien came out just to reiterate, JR is the greatest wrestling announcer ever. That needed to be said, period. Did it really, Aaron? Okay, so I wanted to do a 2-for-1 there, right? Jericho was saying the same thing that Damien Sandow came out of fucking his hole somewhere. And he's saying the same thing as Jericho and so many others. He's a legend. In other words, forget the mistake. You guys are making something out of nothing. He's a legend, bottom line. In other words, saying because he's a legend, he can make any mistake he wants. Who cares? It's Jim Ross. I fucking care. AEW needs to care. Are you a real company, or are you literally just the little leaguer that Jim Ross believes you are? I truly believe when it comes to WWE and AEW, if you ever listen to how Jim Ross speaks on his own podcasts, in the way he speaks in interviews, in the way he conducts his business, we love him, but he truly believes AEW is nowhere in the league of WWE. This dude has said that time and time again, actually. What am I saying? This dude has come out and said that, equating to the fact that they'll never actually achieve that, or at least not for the longest time. So he's probably, why the fuck put in the type of effort that you would on a WWE Raw back in 1998? Jericho, Damian Sandow, and so many others. He's a legend, so forget the fact that he said there's nothing like seeing a WWE live show. Good night, everybody. Forget all of these same mistakes. BC's made a million mistakes. The difference was they were never the same one twice. Jericho, Sandow, what are you talking about, bro? Ross is doing this too often now. And nothing's gonna be done. You're not at least gonna have the fucking talk with him? The talk that maybe we're going to start easing you into a backstage role? You're doing it for him. Ross needs this. But AEW, are you a company or are you not? Nobody's calling for the dude's job. Keep his fucking job. Keep bringing in that money. Jim Ross has a wealth of knowledge he can bestow upon young pro wrestlers, male and female. But to say that this dude is your lead when he is constantly the news story for these botches, why is BC, all of a sudden people like BC are the bad guy here? Well, that's fine. I'll wear the black hat, literally and figuratively. I've been the fucking bad guy my entire fucking life. That's fine. I get off on that shit. I don't give a shit if somebody doesn't like me. I'm gonna sleep like a fucking baby. I get off on that shit. But you're not gonna get lies, man. Because even the villain, and in most cases, the villain holds the most truth. But everybody's being too busy being so righteous, they don't even care about being right. And then they went into, somebody actually called out Damian Sandow. Somebody actually tried to correct Damian Sandow, and Sandow comes back with this. Check this out. This fan says he is. Nobody is doubting that. But it's time. It happens to everybody. We love him forever. But it's time to hang it up. And Aaron says, because of one mistake? Have you ever fumbled a sentence? Have you ever made a mistake in anything? Aaron, you're missing the point. A mistake? Was this a mistake? Was this the only one, Aaron? Do you watch the product, Aaron? Because of one mistake. Damian Sandow says, why? Because of one mistake. Clearly a dude who doesn't watch the fucking product. Doesn't watch AEW. What is this one mistake? If it was one mistake, again, this is huge, by the way. This would get you fired from most companies. But okay, as pro wrestling fans, we know the dude's a legend. We love Jim Ross. We'll let it slide underneath the rug. What is this one mistake? The reason this is a polarizing story is because of what was said at the end of the show. That's not a minor mistake. There's nothing like seeing a live WWE show. Good night, folks. But on top of that, it's all too often, Damian. Damian, you can't make the same mistake time and time again, and there's no repercussions. Bro, you have to know what you're talking about. And then there was another dude. I don't even know. He's from some publication I don't even give a fuck about. Watch what this dude tries to be righteous as well. Everybody's jumping on the, oh, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody chill out. Look at this dude. Look at his words. This idiot says every day you see a million ridiculous things here, so it takes a lot for something to stand out as being really stupid. Idiots calling for JR's the greatest wrestling announcer ever to be fired because he mistakenly called AEW WWE last night would be one of those things. So, this fucking numbnuts calling those idiots that are raising concern over this latest gaffe were idiots. Now, when you fucking schmutz, you're the dumb fuck who literally believes this is one mistake in his entire AEW run. You are the dumb son of a bitch that believes people want this guy fired. Nobody's saying fired. We are saying he has to hang it up soon, put together a plan, put together several months for him to call it the Farewell JR Tour. But this is going to benefit him as well, not just AEW. You gotta believe this is an added stress that even though Jim Ross likes to stay busy, is just not needed for this guy. But for you to turn a blind eye and swipe it underneath the rug, you're helping nobody, bro. We're not calling for the dude to be fired. Sometimes when you get a certain age and you no longer have the it factor to do the job that is needed to be done, sometimes you move on to another role in a company. It happens in every single company. Why is AEW any fucking different or pro wrestling? Because he's a legend, AEW has to suffer this embarrassment non-stop. WWE Champion Kenny Omega, WWE Dynamite. Randy Orton is better than Omega in the AEW roster. Jungle Jim, Barry Jack, or whatever he called Jack. He could not get his name right a few months ago. Always botching. I mean, when do we say enough is enough? When he's in there saying that Rusev is devastating? When Miro is in the ring, is he going to call him Rusev? Is Moxley going to be called Dean Ambrose? Because you know it's coming. You think this is going to get better? But no, we're not going to try to help Jim Ross. We're not going to try to help AEW. We're not going to call a fact a fact. We're going to try to be righteous. We're going to try to say what everybody wants to hear, man. People make mistakes and don't worry about it. You're making something out of nothing. But the mistake keeps happening. So how much bigger can the mistake get than what we saw Wednesday night? You ended the show saying there's nothing like a live WWE show. How much worse do you really want to find out? And then you call everyone idiots because they're raising this concern, you fucking schmutz. Shut your fucking mouth. You fucking idiot. And then Brian Gerwitz, former fucking writer. I think he does some writing for The Rock too. I think that's that guy. He says this, because he was an idiot, he wants everybody else to follow along with other idiots. Check this out. This guy says, people are seriously giving the greatest announcer of all time crap. JR can call Dynamite Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and it shouldn't make a difference. My first day on the job, I called Gerald Briscoe Jack. Now that's a screw up. Oh. So this Gerwitz, he's astonished that people are, in his words, giving JR crap. Like we're just shitting on fucking JR for no reason. Somebody we respect, somebody we love, somebody who is a legend, we're just shitting on. But he didn't do anything. Yeah, that's just what we're doing, Gerwitz. Or are we trying to raise a fucking topic of concern because it is becoming an issue? A pattern is a problem, or it can be a problem. In this case, it is, Gerwitz. Do you even watch AEW? Then don't comment on it, bro. Because BC does on the weekly. And this is a reoccurring problem in so many areas. It's not just saying the words WWE or the letters WWE. It's so many issues from Jim Ross's commentary. It's clear. It's clear. It's not even a shell of what he once was. He just doesn't have it anymore. And you don't want to tell the truth, Brian Gerwitz. You want to be righteous. You want to be the one that's sending out the message of positivity. The message of mistakes happen, everybody forgive. Again, BC's made 1 million, bro. I'm down with the second chances, even third chances. When you make the same mistake over and over again, that's when you have a problematic pattern. But you don't want to talk about that, Brian Gerwitz. You just want to talk about how Jim Ross can call it whatever you called it, fucking Uncle Emmett's Grinch's Christmas Wahoo McDaniels, and you'll be fine with it because he's a legend? What are you saying? What does that mean for AEW? You'll be fine with... You just said, Brian Gerwitz, that you're fine with Jim Ross saying anything he wants because he's a legend. And this helps AEW how, Brian Gerwitz? I'm going to leave everybody on that note, man. What Brian Gerwitz just said. He can call Dynamite Uncle Elmer Fudge's Wahoo McDaniel's Grinch's Christmas, or whatever the fuck he said. He can call it whatever he wants because it's Jim Ross and he's a legend. That's where we are right now in pro wrestling. That's what we're okay with in AEW. Or at least that's what Brian Gerwitz and everybody else wants you to believe. Because there is a legend in the company, he can do and say whatever he wants, and we're just gonna pay homage. Here's a crazy thought. Why not talk to Jim and say, hey, Jim, we Dude, we couldn't imagine AEW without you. What do you think about moving on to this role and helping out the younger talent? And you spent years and years bringing in talent and such. How about it, Jim? You know, because I think we know, like, there has to be a change at the booth. Jim Ross is a man who has not only seen this throughout his career, he was the guy making those decisions. You guys forget. Jim Ross was the guy who was making those cuts and those releases, and Jim Ross was the guy who told people they were too fat for this role or position, or they can't go to the ring. They don't have anything for them because they're too fat or they're too thin. They don't have enough muscle. Ross had to be that guy. And in many interviews on his own podcast, he says, yeah, it was brutally honest, but it was honest. It had to be said. We were looking for one thing. We were not getting it. I had to tell them. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Jim Ross is immune to that type of criticism. Jim Ross is immune to being removed from a position because of legendary status. It's mind-boggling to me. Common sense and logic is no longer at play. It's righteousness, even if you're wrong. BC Amplified. All the best to my amp unit. Salute. Friday Night SmackDown. Hopefully they put together a damn good show. And hopefully soon we can talk about it. Review and reaction style. Amplified. The only way we know how to do it. Hopefully they put together a damn good show. We're only a couple weeks away from Money in the Bank. So we'll see what they actually have. For now, until next time, my amp unit. Think, be, live, amped always. Check you.